Once upon a time, before the advent of reliable and scaled up 3D printing manufacturing, it was kind of a big deal for a new IP to appear that featured miniatures. Even on Kickstarter around 2017, it was kind of a big dick move to swing in and create a game with, well, no less than 40 plastic miniatures, all pre-assembled and bundled with an entirely proprietary ecosystem. Which is why today's topic of discussion is Jamie Jolly's Farsight. Okay, so why am I talking about Farsight? The light wargame themed around mech combat, where the mechs are actually an add-on, okay? Created by the peak light entertainer named Jamie Jolly. Well, like most mid-card YouTubers, my reasoning for selecting to do a video about this thing is that I found it for dirt cheap. And that is kind of the only reason. It's dirt cheap and it's kind of interesting. Yeah, while we were at UK Games Expo last month launching our own tabletop game, Petrichor Blood Runs Cold, my co-designer, Big Jeff, disappeared for about 20 minutes and then covertly tried to come back to the stall with 2 massive boxes of Farsight. Unfortunately, by the time I got to this clearance stall, Farsight had all sold out, so I found the place online and picked up both the base game and the mech expansion for a grand total of like 28 quid or something. However, in the slim chance that this game isn't very good, I at least have 40 models that I can use for Battletech for 15 quid. So, what the fuck is Farsight, and who the hell is Jamie Jolly, and is it worth your time ram raiding the place that I bought it from? And the first question I can definitely answer. The second question still eludes me. The third question, that is entirely up to you. Farsight is what is categorized as a light wargame, which means it shares a lot in common with board games, but also means you don't need anything outside of what's in the box, or these 2 boxes, kind of like a board game. What a light wargame usually means, however, is that you are going to encounter weird mechanics you've not come across before, and strange design choices that don't really sell themselves to wargamers. And generally, the combination of all those things in an isolated ecosystem like this usually means they're actually harder to understand than a full-scale, full-blown wargame. First things first, and important to clarify, this is the base game. It's a big old box with a board, pictures on dice, some stress-inducing dice, a dry white marker, some regular cards, and some unit cards that would put fancy real ale beer mats to shame. Seriously, the box would actually be half the size if these unit cards would just honestly chill out. You could definitely get a handful of these into a loaded sock and your victim would absolutely be none the wiser. And you may have noticed there are no miniatures here. No. That is where the War Chest expansion comes into play, which is another box of the exact same size. Fine, okay. And inside the war chest are these awesome mechs, artillery units, and infantry units, and that is what's in the box. The war chest has nothing else, which is fine. There's quite a lot in there. For my 15 quid, to put it bluntly, that is a lot of Battletech. So how does Jamie Jolly's Farsight actually work? Okay, no, I can't put it off any longer. We need to talk about Jamie Jolly. Jamie Jolly is not a name I would expect to see on a cover as serious as this. Sure, give me Tom Clancy's Farsight. Give me John Carpenter's Farsight. I'll even take Arjen Anthony Lacassen's Farsight. And I'll definitely also accept Tony Hawk's Farsight. But Jamie Jolly is probably up there with like Mickey Zaney in the happiest 80s end of the pier comedian names that I've ever read. You know, the kind of comedian who would come on and throw out some Del Boy impersonations.
All right, look, Rodney, you pelunker, right? You Wally Rodney, right? You dozy old twonk, Rodney.
Talk about how fat his mother-in-law is. Take a swing at his neighbours from Pakistan.
No, don't get me. I like Pakistanis. I couldn't eat a whole one, but I'll tell you what, listen. No, listen.
And then end with like a one-man situational comedy piece where he plays both the customer and the Chinese takeaway owner while doing all the voices for him. But thankfully, that's not the reality we're actually in. In our reality, Jamie Jolly is the designer of Farsight, who got a degree in game design and then went to run a circus, and then ran away from the circus to design board games. I mean, yeah, it's not exactly Weng Cheng-en's Journey to the West, is it? But there's a certain kind of poetry to the mystique of that description, I guess. And then if you do a little bit more digging, you find that Jamie Jolly is the designer of Oathsworn. Yeah, a miniature wargame that hoovered up over a dozen Game of the Year awards and nominations since 2022. I can't help but admire the plight of Jamie Jolly, the man who ran away from the circus to basically make one of the most lauded and awarded board games ever. So just genuinely massive fucking respect. Farsight, however, does feel like we're getting an earlier iteration of the man who made Oathsworn. Each player's forces are made using fixed costs of units and deployed on the table face down. You can have mechs, yeah. You can have artillery, yeah. And you can have soldiers, yeah. But also assassins, saboteurs, and seers who will stay hidden for most of the game. Speaking of hidden, well, most of your stuff is actually going to be hidden. Deployed face down so your enemy won't know what you've deployed until they make an attack or are attacked in return, or revealed by a spy, I assume. And each turn a dice roll will dictate a card drawn from the random events deck, which is all kinds of terrible things that can happen to whoever is in that specific square. And when a unit is finally revealed, the card is flipped over to show its stats and what it can do. You will of course note that in my demo footage I have yet to put any miniatures on the table or mention any miniatures. That is because a miniature only optionally goes on the table when the card is flipped, and because the card has all the stats on it, you can't actually fully just replace it with a model. You have to kind of just make them coexist, which is fine. But I do have to kind of do a little Jenga, a little shimmy twister every time I want to take the miniature off to see the card details, but that's fine. This does feel like somewhat of an oversight. Once per turn, you can also deploy a covert card, which doesn't go onto the board. It gets marked on this secondary board. Yeah, 2 boards. Now we're into one of my awkward favourite territories. I like this. So that's fun. Yeah, I can deploy units covertly and only I can tell where they are. Your opponent can use their artillery and mechs to fight at random spots on the map to try and root out the covert units in this battleship style back and forth. You take your dry white marker, you mark your assassin down, your opponent bombards the field to try and remove them from play. Very nice. However, as nice as this is, there is somewhat of a big oversight on this. The board that you play on has letters A through L and numbers 1 through 9. However, the battleship reference board where you've hidden everything, that has no reference markings. I mean, I can just write this on myself down the sides, but that does feel like a big oversight given this game was in development for 8 years. Combat is handled by subtracting the defense value of a unit from the attack value of the attacking unit, and that number turns into the number of dice that you roll for your attack, with a 33.3% recurred chance of landing a hit on each dice. which I like because I like pictures on dice and I like a little bit of maths to determine the amount of dice. And then that mechanic feels like a light wargame. That I really like. Yeah. Everything else surrounding it is a little bit convoluted, but that I really like as a light wargame. Yes. We also need to talk about the board, which is high quality but simultaneously isn't great. Yeah, the 90s real-time strategy kid in me is okay with these perfectly aligned bases and repeated assets, but considering the initial scope of the game as it's presented, it feels odd that these little pieces, just these little design bits, have just kind of been left behind a little bit. Yeah. I suspect that maybe the Kickstarter ending on 54 grand might partly be to blame for this. Yeah, it's funded, sure, but that only really covers 2 people working full-time on this, and that's before you get to manufacturing. It's that painful no man's land of crowdfunding where sure you got funded, but now you have to make the game on probably less money than you'd hoped. So I do feel for these guys in that regard, but to say how nice this end product is in like 2017, that's pretty bougie. I do like this. I think my main takeaway from it, just in this overview, is that I will probably play a few games of this, I will probably have an okay time, and then I will take the contents of the war chest and then just repurpose it with some hex bases for Battletech. It looks interesting and there are some really nice concepts in there. I just don't know if I can hold on to a closed ecosystem game in theory that takes up that much space. But for the 28 quid that I paid for absolutely everything, I can't really complain. I can't really complain. If I have to get rid of it, that's just a fucking first world board game problem, isn't it? That's whatever, man. But most importantly, where can you get this game for the price that I found it? Well, it's bggbasement.com. Board game basement. BoardGameBasement.com. I don't know how these letters work, but that's where I found it. By the time this video goes out, I don't know how many will be left in stock, but it is worth a look because it's basically, this website is a warehouse clearance company, and I snagged a few board games and card games for like 5 quid as well. Like, I got quite a lot of stuff. The payment system is interesting. It says it doesn't take PayPal, even though there's a PayPal option, but when you click it, it says PayPal doesn't work. There's a PayPal request system which does work, where you click it and then something goes to your PayPal that says, yo, can we take this amount of money? And then you click go and then you've basically paid them. Like smoke signal PayPal, I guess that's what that is like. And then there's a third option, which is to pay by check. I don't think I've seen my checkbook in about 20 years, but that option is available. But I did the PayPal payment request, and some friends have done the same thing with the PayPal payment request. I think there's like 4 or 5 of us that have bought off this website in the last couple of weeks, and it goes through as normal. Stuff turns up in 3 or 4 days, very quick shipping, in nice, well-packaged big boxes. These guys know what they're doing. And despite how not especially legit everything looks on the website, it is all completely above board and legit. So fine, yeah. Thank you to my wonderful Patreon community for keeping this channel going, and thank you to everyone who turned up early enough on the Friday at UK Games Expo before we completely sold out of our tabletop skirmish game, Petrichor Blood Runs Cold. I'm really sorry I had to disappoint everyone for basically 2.5 days, which was kind of rough, but I just did not bring enough stock. I am in the process of working through the logistics of a worldwide shipped, next wave of orders, like made to order stuff. So stay tuned on the socials and on this channel if you want to know when that happens, because there'll be a small ordering window, and after that I then have to figure out what to do next. Yes, thank you to all of you, and thank you to Jamie Jolly for such an odd little light wargame board game Battletech experience. Yeah. Cheers. I'm out of here.
Jamie Jolly will be appearing in Jack and the Beanstalk at the Leeds Hyde Park Theatre House this year from December the 1st through to December the 18th. Tickets can be ordered from our box office at 081 811 8181.